and intense battle of weeds. It all came down today to who the people prefer to be their next governor in a contest that came in the midst of a global pandemic. Welcome to your special edition of Politics Today on Channels Television. Extended coverage of the Edo governorship election. Welcome, everyone. And thank you so much for staying with your home for the news. I'm Seun Okinbaloye. And some of what has happened today is what we are bringing to bear, what we saw on the field, what has happened, the expectations of the people, the anticipation that came in the air, and what came out of it today. So we break it all down for you. Where do we begin from? We can tell you that in most parts of the state, the process of election or voting has been concluded, and there are sorting or collation of results in most of the RAs and local government areas of Edo State. And also we can tell you that most of those whom you expected to see, especially those who are interested in seeing how this election pans out, who wins the election, have voted and they have given their reaction to this exercise. Where do we begin from? Let's see the visuals and the sound, sight and sound of the voting of the governor of Edo State and the PDP candidate Godwin Obaseki. He arrived at his polling unit earlier today to cast his ballot alongside his wife Betty Obaseki. And afterward, of course, he has some reactions on the exercise. Perhaps good or bad. Let's take a listen to him.
This would have been much better organized. Being a sole day election in the country. This is the only election taking place today. And I expected that with the preparations, which was assured by INEC, voters wouldn't have to spend up to 2 hours on the queue just trying to cast their votes, because it could be quite discouraging and could lead to voter apathy. In the last elections, which was a presidential election, there were 2 points, voting points, in that, my unit. And it didn't take up to an hour to get my votes cast. Today, you could see that the card readers were very slow, and that is the situation across most high voting population centers in Oredo from the reports I've gotten to now. And for me, that's a bit worrying. I'm just concerned about the process of just getting to vote. I mean, the tedium, the difficulty. If I, as governor, could stand in the queue for more than 1.5 hours to cast my vote, you can imagine what other people are going through across major voting centers in Oredo.
Obaseki there for you. What about his counterpart in the race, the APC candidate, Pastor Osage Izeyamo? There you go. You can see him there approaching the officials, the ad hoc officials, and he cast his ballot at his polling unit in his local government area today. The process of COVID-19 protocol being observed in that regard. And there you go. He goes to cast his ballot. Let's get his reaction to the exercise.
I can't say yet, the communication is not that good. So I've not been able to get a lot of people, but I'm happy that in some places they have started voting, which is good. Sometimes you delay these things far too long. If the country are starting early, it means that the prayers also being there, which is quite good. I needed to vote here. After voting here now, I'm going to relocate where I can see the situation. I'm not going to be moving around, but at least in Benin, I can at least access all the networks and I'll be able to know what is happening and react to it. But I'm a bit constrained here. But if I have not come to vote today, it would be funny that I will not vote for myself. So I'm happy I've been able to vote. When I'm able to talk to our people, I will have a fair idea of how well it's going. But here, I have no complaints.
It was an election a lot of people have described as largely peaceful, although there are reports here and there about pockets of violence, which of course are yet to be confirmed. But some of the incident that happened that we captured on camera for you as incidents of protests by voters who claim that there were no sight of ballot boxes before the exercise started. They smelt a rat, and at the end of the day, it does look like it was resolved. Also, our cameras picked in other parts of the state incident of vote buying and people exchanging votes for money, which our cameras picked in some other parts of the city. The earlier one where you saw the protest was in the city of Benin and Apapava precisely. There you go. Those who are seen collecting money around the voting area. Also, we can also tell you that, there's some people who disagreed. The details of their disagreement is quite not ascertained. We saw some fracas happened at some point also in some parts of the state where it ended in some kind of fisticuffs. This election had come. What happened, what INEC did, what they've done differently this time around, what the security agencies have done today, and we are able to to grab one of those who are in charge of this exercise. We have a commissioner of police, the head of the National Central Bureau, Interpol, and the head of the Nigerian Police Election Monitoring and Evaluation Group, Mr. Garba Umar. Thank you so much, Mr. Umar, for coming tonight.
Thank you, Shehu.
It's very strange sometimes to find a police officer dressed the way you are, especially on a day like this.
This is my uniform for the work.
For the Interpol, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. But you are here for the election.
Yeah, I'm here for the election.
Sorry that we've kept you for some time. But again, it's very important for Nigerians to know what the police have done and what they have done differently, where people have grievances, and what could be done to change things going forward. But if you are to assess yourself, I know it's a difficult one. You will never say you've done badly. But how do you assess the police today?
To be honest, this election has shown Nigerians that the Nigerian police is up and doing. And we have done it. Against all odds and expectations. What happened today, you can see everyone you interviewed will tell you that there are adequate, the election was peaceful, the security is adequate. And on my own part, as a monitor, I'm representing the Inspector General of Police to evaluate and then monitor exactly what happened in so many, in the totality of the election in Edo State. And from the information I received and from what happened, we're satisfied that the Nigerian police and other security agencies have done well. Extremely well.
Okay, that's the assessment of the Nigerian police.
Yep.
So let's take it from where we might disagree.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, from the COVID-19 protocols.
Yep.
The implementation, adherence to it, a lot of people have said adherence to it is largely poor. Could the police have done differently?
No, of course, certain things, had to happen. But the Nigerian police, if you look at it, are on to enforce. But we cannot franchise an individual who comes to cast his vote or do what is constitutionally enshrined for him. And that is where we, on our own part, we make sure that all our police officers are adequately provided with masks. And you can see all of them, when you go to the center, we look at individual, we see how they are doing. So if you check and the balance is okay for me.
Because I thought the police are supposed to, there is a protocol. The presidential task force.
The distancing.
The 2 meters, the distance. INEC had said, because we know INEC cannot enforce. We know it's the duty of the police to ensure that those procedures are clearly followed. For example, INEC had said, no face mask, no voting. Yep. But we saw some people who came around without their face mask.
It could be, if you check or you look at the totality of it, everyone, especially within areas where we have visited, almost everyone is wearing a mask. And you will see some, they'll put it at the chin, and the police will say, no, put it on. And if you look at the social distancing, at times you discover that large crowd number of individuals that come in, the places that were earmarked for this is not enough. But there is no way what the police could do. However, and the other agencies that is responsible for making sure this is done is not only the Nigerian police.
If you look at that, the pictures on your screen right there, that is totally far from social distancing. Mr. Umar, I thought that there were supposed to be some demarcation. Like if you go to the banks, in my office, there are demarcations, even in the workspaces, there are for us as workers in Channels TV that you must obey compulsorily. You don't get into the premises without your face mask. These are statutory since this COVID-19 came upon us. But I thought that those were supposed to, the marking of where people were going to stand. Were those not supposed to happen?
I like your argument, and what you are saying is quite true. But let me tell you, things can be on the other way. Reason somebody comes in, he has his vote, his voter's car, and also he has his mask, and he goes into the compound. Do you have any right to stop that person from going in? No. So you can see the situation. It is not about the police. It's about the number of Nigerians or Edo citizens that are there to cast their vote. And you cannot, no security agencies will tell you not to go in. So the situation is probably the area, the polling unit, which is the INEC has already prepared these polling units. You cannot change because number of people are, if they are about 1,000 or 800 or 200, and you expect somebody about 150, they are there and they have their, you can't stop them from going in. The only way which we did was to make sure that when you go in, certain level of distancing is maintained. Certain level of wearing your mask is maintained. Some, and as you look at it, where I was there with you guys, some of them, they were having the mask, but they pull it down. We keep on asking our men, make sure they cover up. And other health workers are there telling them what to do. The Nigerian police primarily is to make sure that security of that place is maintained.
Including the security of people's health.
Your health,
isn't it?
Of course. I agree with you 100%. Yes.
Mr. Umar, because you are basically in charge of Interpol here in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Of course, you are privy to a whole lot of stuff. But okay, let me start by asking you, how many arrests have you made today?
We are collating. They were still coming in. By the end of the day, we'll be able to, we have a department that is saddled with the responsibility of collecting all the results of those who are arrested. And that department is headed by the 4th CID, and they are working on it. So probably by the time, at the end of the election, we'll be able to know the number of arrests that were made. But however...
Oh, you've made arrests? Have arrests been made?
No,
today?
To be honest, I don't want to tell you that whether arrest has been made or not. But where we had problems, pockets of problems, the prompt intervention of the security personnel that saved both the INEC, the official, and others, that was what we did. So probably by the end of the day, if there is any 1 or 2 arrests, we'll let you know.
Okay. So we heard that there were some pockets of violence. So
yep.
we try to confirm them. But what can you confirm to us? For example, was there any case of any casualties today? Any deaths?
No report has reached us about death. No.
But did you also hear that there were cases of deaths?
I don't hear rumors. I only work on yes.
Well, what they say is that sometimes they say a part of intelligence gathering is also rumors. That rumors filter into intelligence, yes. That you filter the right information.
When we receive the rumor report, we process it. Look,
but I'm very sure you heard that when people had said that, oh, they killed somebody here, they injured somebody there.
They have made so many of that there are sporadic shooting, there are this, there are that. But however, Sheun, I want to let you know, believe you me, we went to places where such reports were made, and we checked, there was nothing like that. In fact, there are some reports that you can't even imagine, that a catchment of arms and some group invaded a polling unit. We sent our men. What do we see? People were on the queue freely voting. Nothing. So you can see, we received so many reports. And that is why by the time we finish the catalog of what we have, we shocked Nigerians. Security agencies, this time around, my brother, we got it right.
All right. So in the area of, because from my experience of covering elections, the hour we're in right now is perhaps the most dangerous and the most critical. That's when in the, under the shadow of darkness, people do very bad things. Are you aware of that, isn't it?
We're quite aware, and we are prepared for that.
What have you done to ensure that there are no bad behaviors?
You know, we are no more at the polling booths. We are now moving towards the collation center. What we did was we collapsed the security at the polling units, the voting centers. And now we are moving the whole bunch of the securities to the collation center. And this is how we are doing. So you can see the trend. And don't forget, 331,000 police officers are deployed for this election. Out of these 31,000, 8,200 were deployed at the polling units. Each local government has a standby 2 units. And in each unit, there are 63. So if you have 126 in 18 local government areas, apart from the patrol of sectoral areas, all the senatorial districts also, they have 3 units. You can see how massively we deployed.
So, I mean, tonight we should go to sleep. Things will be fine, and collation will go on fine. You said you've made adequate arrangement. Again, the issue that happened yesterday, how have you been able to resolve? We understand that some governors are in town, and there are issues about siege or no siege. How are you handling that? Has that come up today again?
No, we are professional. The government, the Nigerian police says there is going to be curfew from 12 midnight on Friday to 6 p.m. today. And we enforce that. Nobody, if you don't have a voter, we don't allow you to move around. And everybody knows. The Nigerian police has a duty to ensure that we have a free, fair, credible, and safest election in Edo State. And that was exactly what we did. We do not care whoever that is here or there. But the fact of the matter, anyone that is not an indigent, that has no voter's card, that has no business with the Edo election in terms of voting, we don't allow people to move around. If you want to stay in your house, in a guest house, in a hotel, or anywhere for that matter, we allow you to stay. But if you say you want to move out, we do not allow. And
well,
don't forget,
can they move out now?
Of course.
So people can fly, people can travel around.
They can travel, they can fly, they can go wherever they want to go. But we will not allow people to invade the collation centers, those who have no business. Every political party has representatives and agents. And those agents will be at the collation center. They are only recognized by INEC to represent their parties in that place. So we won't allow, let me use the word, people to invade collation centers. We will not.
You can visit safe, Mr. Umar.
Yep.
The election is not over.
It's not
because
over.
The collation is on.
Yeah.
In fact, some people believe that this is, in fact, the time that you need adequate policing because of what could happen in the collation process. Because we hear stories of people invading collation center and dismantling all the results that have been collated since morning and they make away with them and they go away.
The way
you think is the right time to lift curfew?
Shehu, the way you invited me here, I want to invite you to go to the collation centers and see the massive deployment of the Nigerian police. All the security agencies were in uniformity. We believe that this is a test case. We believe that this is an isolated election, for God's sake, Shehu. Isolated in the sense that it's a single election that we're having. So we can use all our resources at our disposal and do what is right. And that is exactly what we are doing. Don't forget, the experience and administrative qualities of the Inspector General of Police led to this kind of thing that we are seeing changes. We allow this is
He's
one
an
of
expert in election.
Of course, he is, and not only that, we have done something that has never been done before.
What is that?
That is to make sure all sister agencies that are participating in an election, unlike before, whereby this one will go here, this one will go there, all of them are united together, working together for the common goal of making sure the voters' right of Edo citizen counts. And that is what we are doing. And we are making sure we provide adequate security to ensure that citizens, even non-citizens that are here, are well protected. Go to the town, you can see how patrol vehicles are moving. This is to reassure members of the public that we are doing the right thing.
Mr. Garba Umar, thank you so much. Head of National Central Bureau, Interpol, and head of the Nigerian Police Monitoring and Evaluation of the Edo election. Thank you indeed. It's good to see you, and it's a pleasure having you around to talk
Thank
to
you,
us.
Sean. Nice meeting you.
Thank you so much.
Again. Yeah.
We take a break, and when we come back, we look into the election. We allow Mr. Omar to go because I understand now that he needs to leave for some reasons. So when we come back, we'll go in deeper into what the election meant for the Edo people, the significance, the implication of today's exercise, and how INEC conducted the exercise. That's next. Join us again. Let's get back to the conversation. It's a special edition of Politics Today on Channels Television, focusing on the Edo governorship election. We're doing some reappraisal and post-mortem of the exercise as we await the collation and the final results from INEC. We looked at what the police have done, and tonight also we're looking at the exercise in general. Here in our studio, we also have a security expert and a security official, Mr. Bassi is the Assistant Comptroller General of the NSCDC, Edo State. Thank you so much, Mr. Bassi, for coming on tonight.
Welcome.
And from Abuja studio, I have a panel there. Professor Isaac Obasi is a professor of public administration. He's in our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, Prof, for coming tonight. Also, we have Mr. Nick Dazang, is the director of voter education and publicity at INEC. And also we have Ms. Idayat Astan, is the executive director of CDD. Thank you, everyone, for coming on board. And let's get started. Let's give the people of Edo a perspective of how this election all went. We've looked at security. Perhaps, let me go to INEC with Mr. Dazang. I asked Mr. Umar earlier of the Nigerian police if they could assess the police. But let me ask you, it's an unfair question to ask because I know you wouldn't assess yourself badly. How would you assess the INEC's performance in this election?
Well, I think instead of assessing INEC, I would like to pay tribute today to all the stakeholders in the process, from INEC staff, permanent and ad hoc, to security agencies, to members of civil society, to the media, to the youths in Edo, to women groups, to persons living with disabilities, to leaders of faith-based organizations, to traditional rulers, particularly the Oba of Benin, who mediated in the lead up to the conduct of election today, the National Peace Committee, led by General Abdul Salam Abubakar, and the convener, Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka. Now, all these stakeholders played significant and pivotal roles. And it is these roles, barring the few incidents of violence and the malfunctioning of the smart card reader, that amounted to the huge success that we recorded today. So I would like to say congratulations to all, and that on the part of INEC, we will learn lessons from the conduct of this election and factor the lessons we have learned today in the conduct of subsequent elections.
So if you look at it, it's a very critical question. I've asked the Nigerian police about the COVID-19 protocol. This will come up again because of how important the matter is. So let me ask you also, in the issue of adherence to the COVID-19 protocol, this is INEC's major appearance or major outing in the COVID-19 period. A lot of people were said not to have worn their face mask, and the social distancing issue was another matter. Could INEC have done anything different from what happened today?
Well, you know, before now, in fact, even before the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 and the National Center for Disease Control articulated their guidelines, INEC, confronted with the inevitability of end-of-tenure elections, which are circumscribed by law, had to think out a policy of conducting the election within the context of this pandemic. First of all, we have in this country not conducted any election under any pandemic. If you recall that the last pandemic the world saw was in 1918 to 1920, which was when the Spanish flu took place. And by then, no elections had started, no elections had been conducted in Nigeria. So we approached it from that perspective, and we articulated a policy of conducting elections under the context or within the context of this pandemic. And we engaged with stakeholders, you know, severally on this, including the security agencies, the civil society organizations, the media, and so on. And we on the part of INEC, we have the challenge of enforcement, you know, enforcing compliance. But otherwise, we meant well by articulating these guidelines, and we did a pilot of these guidelines in the election we conducted in Nasarawa State 4 weeks ago. And we also did a lot of campaigns in the media and the social media, educating Nigerians about the guidelines and the need to carry out this exercise in safety. We have noticed, unfortunately, that in some cases, the voters did not wear face masks. But those footages that I saw just now on channels are not footages of voters on the queue. I think it's a crowd elsewhere where they are jubilating. I don't know over what. But in most of the footages I saw in our situation room, which were provided for us by different sources, you know, including the media, in most cases, the voters wore their face masks. The only thing I noticed was that in some instances, social and physical distancing was not observed. And this had to do with the fact that this occurred in polling units where the voting did not start in time. So the voters were generally restless in those polling units and therefore did not defer to the COVID-19 regulations. But going forward, we will factor this in our voter education in the conduct of Ondo governorship election scheduled for 10th October 2020 and the 15 harmonized by-elections scheduled for 31st October 2020. So we have noted it. We are not happy about it. If we had our way, we would have loved to have 100% compliance particularly with the COVID-19 regulations, because we want our staff and the voters to be safe, and we don't want to see any infections or a spike in the pandemic. So going forward, we will really intensify voter education about it, and we'll do so in conjunction with our supporters in civil society, in the media, amongst development partners. We will not rest until we educate people properly to properly conduct themselves in concert with these regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Desang. Let me go to Ms. Hassan from the CDD. Give us a sense of your assessment, a general one at that, before we come into details of today's exercise.
Thank you very much, Sean. I think congratulations, because first and foremost, this elections was conducted, the narrative was framed around possibly violent elections, and fortunately for all of us, we have just seen pockets of violence in like 5 local governments, nothing to write home about. So I say congratulations to every one of us, but the issue of implementation of the INEC policy on COVID-19 remains a challenge that can lead to a spike. Electoral offenses, there were records of electoral offenses. Important also is the rampant vote buying that marked these elections. Then I think lastly is an attempt to actually shape perception such that what was really happening on ground did not really match the reality on social media.
So what do you mean by that, Idayat?
I think that it's important to point out that it goes beyond fake news. There was so much attempt to really disinform the public, and to skew the narrative. Even when reality happened, maybe like the issue of the card reader malfunctioning, you find out that the way the narrative was played was as if a party is being cheated. It goes again to another allegation of a movement of polling units, which could actually have spiked violence in the state. That never happened. To an hotel, it did not happen. There were several instances of this, and this preceded the election day itself, but played a very active role. I think for us, we monitored more than 25 of such incidences across the 2 major parties, some doing it outrightly, while some were using proxy to actually put out this kind of information on social media. And what it does is that it delegitimizes the process. It raises unnecessary fear and lifts heightened tempos of what are not necessarily on ground, particularly in other parts of the country and in the Committee of Nations.
Let me go to Professor Isaac Obaze. From your own point of view, you've studied human behavior and as related to public administration, and what we saw today with people jostling for public office, such as the #1 seat in Edo State. In terms of the behaviors of voters today and perhaps how these turned out, are you surprised by anything?
Yeah, thank you. I would say so far, so good. It's not because my 2 colleagues here have said so. The overview report I read from 9th correspondent who covered on the 3 territorial districts, confirm this verdict they're giving you. I think people have tried to prove the high level of pre-election apprehension a little bit wrong. So Idia was talking about that this narrative. I think looking back, we can say that we are grateful to God that what we saw did not turn out as people expected it. And like you asked the commissioner, police commissioner Umar, it has gone. It says to be peaceful, orderly, safe. This evening, like you rightly pointed out, that's when some part of that human behavior you were talking about will manifest. So we've had occasions in the past where everybody would say, oh, it went on well, observers, international and local, we commend the election process, only for the narrative to change. What we hear in the next morning is a different thing from what was said. So we do hope the Edo people, let me put it this way, not just hope. We appreciate the conduct generally, on balance, so to say, of Edo, the conduct of Edo people. We notice the pockets of violence here and there, but I think in statistics we are more interested in the average, the mean. So if on balance, what we have is about 85% good expectation, good result, and the other one is not the other bad aspect of people's behavior. We can tolerate and say the people of Edo, they have done creditably well.
But what we saw, of course, you mentioned it, that a lot of people had expected that it was going to be hell on earth in terms of what politicians could do and what thugs and violence may happen. But in general, what would you attribute to what has caused maybe the kind of peace that we're seeing in this election as against the kind of violence that we often see at our elections?
Excellent question. My colleague here, Nick, has pointed it out. Those people he thanked for a job well done, they have influenced the behavior of today, directly and indirectly. You cannot see Edo people, totally disrespecting the Oba Obini. And to take it beyond that, the National Peace Committee also did a wonderful job, what they are used to doing, by making people realize that what's happening in Edo has implication in other places, not just Ondo that is coming very soon. So it is important that we give credit to those who have played important role in shaping the behavior we have today. Believe you me, I know that people looking the other way around, they would have, done more violence than expected. But like the police commissioner said, Umar, really there was good performance by all the joint forces that really worked together today. But let me say the massive deployment of 31,000 is not the magic. It's not really the magic. We saw it in last election in Kogi. We saw they massively deployed, and when those electoral brigands will come, the security men will look the other way, and they do their havoc and go away. But it seems not to have happened now. Everybody knew that they are being watched very seriously, and I think we can give credit to all of them.
All right. Let me quickly come to Mr. Bassi here, who is the ACG of the NSCDC. What reports do you have as regarding this election? Any reports of violence?
Generally, the elections went on well. There were unverified reports of pockets of violence.
So even the NSCDC has not identified any of sorts?
No. We have not. We have received reports that it's not verified now. But until our men came back from where they are, then we will have to know. Then we will have to sift all the reports and then know whether the reports we have heard is true or not.
Give us an understanding of what NSCDC's role was, because I understand that primarily, perhaps your role was to secure assets in this process. Was that the sole thing that NSCDC did?
No, we not only secured assets, we deployed about 4,000 of our personnel to secure critical government assets. But we also deployed about 7,311 of our personnel in polling units. So if you go all through the states, in all the polling centers, you see officers of civil defense with the police.
Has any of your men made any arrest? No arrests whatsoever?
Not to my knowledge now, because some of them are in the very interior places. Until all of them will come back to the headquarters, maybe by tomorrow, they will have a good, we can say that there was no arrest.
So in the Riverine area, everything went well, or you've not gotten report from there?
No. It's difficult. Some of the places we cannot access by telecom. So that is the issue. But from the places, all the other areas have been on our men. They have been sending reports via SMS or phone calls. So now we have not had any issue of arrest.
What about vote buying? Did you see vote buying? Did your men see vote buying?
I was on the street. I went to some of the centers. There were subtle evidence of that some people are doing vote buying, but you can never verify same. Because when I went in a center in Sapele Road, I saw some of them. So when I just approached them, they all left, they all scattered. So maybe they
found a more technical way of handling vote buying. We will assess that and analyze that more. Issues of vote buying, issues of how this election was conducted, the security situation. We get more analysis right here on Channels Television, your home for the news. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, everyone. They say that elections are festivals of democracy. Was that the case in Edo State? We're breaking it down for you to give you a sense of what happened today. Channels Television combed around the 18 local government areas and the 3 senatorial districts of Edo State today. And we're bringing you some of those stories that are very important to you. Part of what you need to see now at some of the sights and sounds of what happened across the land, Edo State today. Take a listen to this report.
It's the first major election amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, and early preparations for the 2020 Edo governorship elections begin with officials of the Independent National Electoral Commission posting out materials at the various polling units. The exercise, scheduled to start at 8 a.m., is however delayed due to the necessary COVID-19 guidelines checks.
But see what we have there. People just enter into the thing, ask them how they like it. Nothing is going on.
With an average turnout across the voting centers, both young and old alike come out for the accreditation process and then cast their votes. But there's some tension at the Amokwai Model Primary School in Oredo local government area between voters and INEC officials, which threatens to spiral out of control. But the situation is soon contained following an intervention by security agencies. The voters, who are mostly seen with their face masks, say it has been a smooth and peaceful process so far.
It's okay, it's not too bad anyway. Not too bad. What do you make of the environment, the process and everything, sir? Everything has been going smoothly. It's fine.
If you look at the streets, persons have kept generally to stay at home order, and there have been soldiers and policemen at intervals around the total state. So I think the election has been peaceful. The security is okay for now.
It's a different opinion from the election observers, who say that there is no adherence to the COVID-19 safety protocols.
COVID protocols were observed in protests. What am I saying? People were using facial masks, yes, but there was no social distancing like we're observing now. They were all clustered together. Temperatures were not taken, no hand sanitizers, and so it appears that the number of persons were just surging, on the ad hoc staff, yes. So generally, that is what we are observing.
Meanwhile, the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Leye Oyibade, is in charge of security at the post, and he rates performance high. Edo residents have cast their votes, And now, the wait is on for the Independent National Electoral Commission to complete the process of collation and counting the ballots to find out who has the mandate to run the state's affairs for the next 4 years.
All right, there you have it. Some of the situation around Edo State today. I still have my panel with me right here, Mr. Bassi, ACG of NSCDC from Abuja studio, Mr. Nick Dazang of INEC, Idayat Azan of CDD, and Professor Obasi, Public Administration Professor. Thank you so much, gentlemen and lady. Let's take some of this issue one after the other. And it has to do with late arrival of materials and staff of INEC. Mr. Dazang, what happened? Did some of your men, did some of them wake up late today, or what happened? Because some people are reporting that the exercise started late in some areas.
Yes, thank you for that observation. Actually, we had 1 or 2 cases, I think in one of the RAs, the registration areas, where the staff reportedly complained that by the time they were coming out to open the polling units, they had not received their bank advice for the allowances for their training. And that took some time for us to sort out, and I think that explains why there were some delays in that particular registration area. And the polling units were set up late, and the voting therefore commenced late. In fact, as late as around 10 a.m. this morning. So, but these are isolated cases, and like I said, all the challenges we are noting them, and we'll try and address them ahead of the conduct of the Ondo governorship election and subsequent elections.
Have you been able to pay some of them? Because not only in the morning, some people are still angry. Have you paid these young men and women of the NYSC?
Sometimes we have challenges for which INEC is not to blame. Some of the ad hoc staff do not give us correct account details. And some of them give us account details belonging to their relations. So there's no way that if you give an account detail that is short of the 10 digits, or the digits are not correctly written, or they belong to some relation or sibling of yours, and then you receive the alert. Instead, he will receive the alert. So we going back to 2019, we had these challenges. But what we do in INEC is that as soon as you are co-opted to work as an ad hoc staff, you are given a letter of appointment, so to speak, which spells out the terms of engagement and the allowances that are going to accrue to you. So you can see that we are as transparent as possible. And the idea is so that even the ad hoc staff can interrogate situations where they are either shortchanged or the monies are not forthcoming. But in these isolated cases, you discover that the ad hoc staff themselves are their own enemies. They don't give us correct account details. They don't give us their own account details in some cases. And therefore, it is not the fault of our account persons if they don't get their advice, because the account persons that work for us will work with the details that you give them. So we always insist ahead of the training and engagement that all our ad hoc staff must give us the correct account details. In the 2019 elections, when I was in the FCT, I had a number of such persons, and it took us time to sort them out. In fact, at a point, they resorted to going to the media to complain. And we now have to take it with the media to say that, look, this is the issue. It's not as if the money is not there. The money is there. We paid. It was returned by the banks because they didn't give correct account details. So it is likely to be the case in this instance because it affected only a few of the ad hoc staff.
So give us a sense of what we should be expecting. Looking at the INEC election result portal, out of 2,627 results, only 1,224 results have been posted on that portal, which is strange because elections, the conduct has been over and people should have posted these results. A lot of Nigerians are wondering when we can start getting when these results from the local government areas will start coming in. But from the information that you have
yes,
right now, Mr. Desang, how many local governments do we have?
From what you have said, from what you have said, more than half of these results have been uploaded on our portal. And between now and the collation, before the collation is over, we intend that all these results should be uploaded because the idea is, first of all, to increase the transparency measures that were put in place and also to reduce the mistrust between us and Nigerians. Thirdly, we also intend that if people can view the outcome of the conduct of the elections in all the polling units real time, then it doesn't make any case for you to insist that the results can be changed or that you have to waylay our staff on their way to the collation centers. But all the same, in spite of this measure, we are working with the security agencies to secure the collation centers. But as I've said elsewhere, these things are in the open. Apart from the fact that you can view these results electronically, even at the polling units, the Form EC8, that is the result sheet that is entered at the end of the conduct of the election at the polling unit, is also entered in a postal form called Form 60E, which is usually pasted at the polling unit, and any voter who wishes to view can view at the end of the conduct of the election. So these transparency measures have been there since 2011, and the fact that these measures are there and you can view them then means that nobody can manipulate or alter the outcome of any result at the collation center. And in any case, the candidates and the political parties are entitled to nominate agents to represent them first at the level of the polling unit, then at the level of the collation center at the registration area, and at the level of the local government collation center, and then finally in the instance of a governorship election at the state collation center in the INEC headquarters. So you have a chain that can be, surveilled or monitored by your agents, and you also have access to the tear-offs of the results from the polling unit to the RA, to the local government, to the state, and you can put them together. And if there are any reservations that you have, you can deploy all these documents and make a case for yourself in court. So this is why we are saying we don't need to go and waylay innocent ad hoc staff who are doing their duty by desperate politicians. It's unnecessary. And in INEC, we find it even ludicrous that people resort to that because it does not change anything. And the political parties and the candidates have it in their power to monitor the exercise, which is open and transparent. And now we have added the INEC results portal, which you can view using www.inecresults.com and view it real time. And showing what we have done is that we have increased the width of this portal such that 2 million people can view this portal at the same time without any glitches, without its clogging. So, and I suspect that we won't have up to 2 million, but we made provision for the portal to accommodate 2 million viewers real time.
It's interesting. I'm viewing it presently. From the last time that I was asking you, the total number of submitted results have gone to 1,230. But you perhaps did not answer my the perspective which I was talking about. The Z-Pad that was introduced was meant to be used in the afternoon, when those officials are supposed to have taken that result when it landed. By afternoon or by 4 p.m., we should have had almost all results in this portal. But we have just it's gone to 1,244. So several hours later,
election,
it's not there.
The Z-Part was not deployed. The Z-Part was not deployed in the conduct of the Edo governorship election. We did a trial run of the Z-Part in the conduct of the Nasarawa State House of Assembly election 4 weeks ago. And the intentment of the commission was to use the Z-Part to complement and even supplement the smart card reader, because over time we are having challenges with the card reader which is functioning. All computer-related products have shelf lives. Your handset, your computer has a shelf life maximum of 4 years. We have used the smart card reader now for 5 years. And the permanent voter card was intended to be used for 10 years, after which we will now migrate to the national identity card that would have been issued by the National Identity Card Management Commission. Unfortunately, the registration being conducted by NIMISI has not gained the kind of traction to generate the database that INEC has. And in addition to that, these permanent voter cards have antennae embedded in them. And over time, because not all voters keep these permanent voter cards very well, the antennae embedded have broken, and therefore it makes it difficult for the smart card reader to read them timeously. So the Z-Part was intended to assist the smart card reader in capturing the facials, or rather in authenticating and verifying the facials. But when we did the trial run in Nasarawa State, we had some issues, and that delayed the conduct of the election, and it made voters restless, such that they did not observe in a lot of polling units social and physical distancing. So we deliberately said, okay, since we've not perfected the use of the Z-Pad, let us defy it, let us perfect it. And by the time we perfect it, we can deploy it in subsequent elections. So it's not as if we have jettisoned the Z-Pad. No, we need to perfect it. And it's policy in INEC that when you introduce new technology, you use a small election to test it, so that you can manage whatever challenges that might arise from the pilot or from the test. And we cannot take the risk of doing extrapolating that test run to the Edo governorship election, especially given the fact that we are conducting the election within the context of COVID-19. And of course, as you very well know, in the lead up to the conduct of the election of today, there were several incidents of violence which even prompted the commission to threaten 4 weeks ago that it might postpone the election. But thank God, after so many engagements and through the goodwill of many stakeholders and their robust support, we've been able to conduct the election peacefully. And so the Z-Part is a technology for tomorrow. We have not jettisoned it. We only deferred it, and we'll see fine recourse to it until such a time when we revalidate our voter cards and also replace most of the smart card readers that have aged.
All right. Mr. Dazang, let me allow Idayat to weigh in on this. Idayat, are you impressed by INEC's outing today in terms of the Z-Part, for example? You heard the explanation of Mr. Dazang, and some IT experts have criticized the sophistication of that Z-Pad. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I think when it comes to the Z-Pad, I'm in agreement with the fact that being a new technology which has not been trialed broadly, the last election was basically a State House of Assembly election, with such a small sample size, you don't bring it to such a contentious elections like this Edo elections. But what is very important, and what I quite agree with you, is the result viewing portal. Now, result viewing portal, what basically INEC is doing is what is called a photo quick count. So you are putting the citizens form, the form 60E that we always had. You are putting it on a portal, and it's expected to be uploaded immediately after the elections. So voting has closed, counting has finished in several places as early as 2 up to 4 p.m. By 8:37, we should at least have 80-90% of those photos or those scanned copy uploaded. It is immediate, and it is only in such instance it will be very useful that before collation, which is already ongoing, what collation will be ongoing, or even if they merge it, all these figures are already available in the public domain, and it makes it very impossible for any kind of interference or attempt to actually change the vote. Now, going further again, the result collation, which I have called it a photo quick count, has not even come with what we expected. It's technology where, for instance, it is tabulating and giving us those figures almost simultaneously and open to the public domain. For you to download and start looking through all this, it's more going to be like an academic exercise that can take us up to 1 week. But be that as it may, it's a confidence building morale. And in the next 1 week, or even immediate, because I was thinking as we are seated here, that if we deploy, if we had that enough sample size, even with the sample size that is present now, we deploy people, we can do the calculation and have an idea with few margin of error of what the result should actually look like by tomorrow.
Maybe Diaz, you are one of a friend of mine who said INEC is resorting to a diskette technology at this age where we are having hard drives and of terabyte size. Because of, if you look at it, Mr. Dazang, and you rightly mentioned what I was asking Mr. Dazang earlier, that those results should have been, almost all the 2,627 results that we're expecting should have been in the portal latest by 5 p.m. because they are polling unit result, not RA report result, nor local government area result. Isn't it? Is it a diskette kind of technology, Idayat? Do you agree with that criticism?
It is, actually. No, it is. This is something that we have projected as early as 2015 to do. But it is just the time factor, what it takes to put all the pictures together and start calculating. So it's a deterrence kind of, it's a deterrence measure which has been used in several parts of the world, particularly in Eastern Europe. So it's actually for observers. But be that as it may, it's something that makes us happy that it's actually being started. But the ZPAD is somewhere that we have to go. And to chip in, again, it has to do with logistics management, which INEC did not manage properly, again, in this election. It's a recurrent trend that each election will be talking about logistics. So Mr. Dazang is talking about protest being the only reason why there was late commencement. But the failure of vehicles to arrive timely impacted on the elections. And when you look at why we could not even implement the social distancing rule, that was partly responsible because by the time the INEC staff were reaching the polling unit, time was largely closed. This is an election that by 6, 7 o'clock, we should have been at the polling station, marking where people should sit, having all those protocols already laid out, such that as voters are coming, they are just keying right into it, not voters waiting for INEC, ad hoc, and officials actually to arrive at the polling unit.
Prof, we have about, I'm being told we need to go on a break, but we have about a minute before that break. What's your take? I want you to weigh in on this. Maybe you can rescue your friend, Mr. Dazang, in this diskette technology criticism against INEC on the ZPAD.
Not to rescue. I can only excuse him because he's not in the field. I think we're even expecting you to help us with field results as to why some of them, is there logistics in terms of bringing them where they are, if they have no technology at all that will enable that to happen, are there in the remote areas where they are not able to come out and do the needful? We needed field report to be able to make intelligent commentary on this. But be that as it may, the confidence building of the exercise itself is very important, because the moment you raise that issue, the excellent verdict we gave earlier had a question mark on it immediately, because like I observed earlier, elections have finished peacefully, orderly, safely, but now, from now, this is when it happens. So why would something in some areas, election finish by 2, by 4, this has not happened, they've not been uploaded. And this is what we thought would be the greatest confidence building measure that INET is bringing into this election. So it's really something to worry about.
So let's take a breather. But when we come back, Professor Obasi had tried to rescue his friend, Mr. Dazang, just a bit. But when we come back, there are still more issues to look at as we keep our fingers crossed as a result are trickling in. If I refresh this now, 1,264 results, 1,297 now of the 2,627 on the INEC election result portal. We come back and look at what you need to expect in the outcome of this election, as the results are going to start being collated at the central point at the INEC headquarters. We'll be there on the ground for you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
The voters are enthusiastic to come out and vote. And that is because we have told them that all security arrangement is going to protect lives and property. They are so enthusiastic. And that is what is all about democracy. It should be inclusive. It should be free. It should be fair. And it should be acceptable at the end of the day. So what we have seen is policemen dominating but not intimidating. Security agencies all over the places, they are not intimidating, but they are giving assurance and reassurance. And all that we have told them at this particular place is to use their face masks for their safety. Because in this COVID era, we are not only talking of credible, free, fair, we are also talking about safe election. Safety is key. So for me, I am still going round. We will be able to say that we are putting on our best. But you know, everybody has his own role to play. The security agencies have their roles to play. The politicians, even the press, have their own roles to play. For now, we will continue to go around to ensure that we put the wrong things right. We have crossed all the T's, we have dotted all the I's. So we are expecting a credible election at the end of the day.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. We still have our panel discussing some of these issues for us. Professor Isaac Obasi, before I come to the studio here in Benin City, I was asking Mr. Umar earlier on that this is the period where a lot of things happen. This is the period where professional politicians now get down to work, and those ones who are notorious for rigging, this is the time where they do their job. What do you think could be happening right now, and what, from your experience, not only theory now, practical-wise, what do you think we should be expecting and the security agencies should be doing?
Let me put it this way. I don't want to be overtly optimistic. If the improved behavioral thing we have today, the pattern we saw, is anything to go by. If the INEC, the security agencies tried to build our confidence in the process, if the visiting governors, I don't want to mention anyone, but I believe all of them should be treated equally. if they are also checkmate, if the politicians who create the problems, you know, when INEC divides a means, they will divide a counter means to try to subvert that. If all the ifs I've mentioned are able to behave as we had it earlier today, I think we may expect a decent, a more respectable and acceptable, credible result. Let me say it this way. When President Jonathan was in power, he allowed the election in Edo to be held in a free and fair atmosphere. Despite all the war mongering, all the, you know, the high tune rhetorics that we witnessed that time, everything went well. And Comrade Oshemele acknowledged that indeed the president did not influence. If by the promise of our current president, President Muhammad Buhari, is not going to interfere and everybody takes a cue, I suggest that this night, if the politicians are well marked and not allowed, or their proxies checked, we will have less. We will have less of anything that we reduce the credibility of the results. Let me be optimistic that based on what has happened so far, we are more likely to have perhaps an acceptable result than before.
Mr. Bassi, security-wise, at this period, you hear what happens. What are your men doing right now?
You know, after the elections at the polling units, we collapsed our men to go to the ward collection centers, where they provide security at the ward collection centers. Thereafter, they will move to the local government collection centers with all INEC staff and their materials. So at every stage in the process of this election, our policemen and our men are there to protect the results and the material and the staff themselves of INEC.
I understand that there are trackers on some of these vehicles. Are you aware?
Yes.
Are those still monitored? I mean, because I understand that it is a dashboard.
There's a central unit of all these agencies that sits and monitor these elections at the CP's office.
Because what I understand and what I'm being told is that there is a dashboard and every major helix that is used in transporting the materials, you can track them digitally.
Yes.
Is it still in?
Yes.
Did all of the local government areas have, or the racks have all of these trackers?
Yes, provided by the police, yes.
And what is the kind of escort that they get? Your men also are with them?
Yes. All the sister agencies are with them, not just one agency.
In the Riverine area, it does look like we are not getting as much information from Akoko Edo area and some other riverine area in Edo State. What could have been responsible for that? Those are some of the borders communities.
Communities, yes. Because of, some of them you have to go by canoe, or the boats, engine boats. They transporting the materials to the polling unit first. Then throughout the elections, that's some of them. Maybe that's a delay because of transporting materials to those centers. Then bringing them back also, and the rains. You know that this evening there was
rain
heavily.
Oh, did it rain across the state,
yes.
or just in some?
Rain across the state.
Okay.
So those materials cannot come under the rains.
I mean, you think that the collation might last till Sunday afternoon or something, or because from experience, what do you think we should be expecting?
By tomorrow, I think the elections from the results from all the local governments.
We might have to keep vigil. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
We'll keep vigil today.
Our men are still on the.
My colleagues are already on the ground.
Yes.
Some of them are still on the field, monitoring how these things are.
We are not sleeping throughout this night.
Wow, it's a vigil.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Yes. Mr. Dazang will be keeping vigil, Is there any information you are getting, Mr. Dazang? How many local government results have come in? Do you have any idea?
Well, I can't give you the latest information because I've been here waiting for you. I left the situation room about 2 hours ago, so I have to go back to the situation room and update myself. It is when I do that that I can effectively respond to why not all the results have been uploaded. But as I am here, I'm out of the situation room until I link up by Zoom. It is then that I will be in a position to update you. So you pardon me for that. And I didn't need to be salvaged, really, because if the period you kept us waiting, if I knew I would have returned to the situation room, then I would have given you, up-to-date information. So next time you call me, I will have updated information and I'll bring you up to speed.
Okay, so definitely, because it does look like something is rapidly happening. Maybe some of your guys are actually watching right now, and in the last few, it's over 200 results are being uploaded. It's gone to 1,341 now out of 2,627 results so far. But give us an understanding, Mr. Dazang, of the issue with this result collation. A lot of people have wondered, must we, because you see the chief returning officer manually filling the result one after the other. That sometimes takes about an hour. When all the results are coming, that tired a lot of people, and people are wondering, can't we do any better? For a lot of people who are watching and are expecting that will play out again, please educate us. What happens when we have to, the chief
we can do a lot of things to fast.
We'll have to fill it manually, one after the other.
Yes, we can do a lot of things to fast track the process. But the laws have to be changed to allow us to fast track the process. The law says you must enter the outcome of the results at the polling unit manually. You must enter the outcome of the collation at the registration area manually. And you must enter the result of the collation at the local government level manually, up to the state in a governorship election, and then up to the federal collation or presidential collation center in respect of a presidential election. So the laws need to be changed to allow INEC to bring in, to further deepen the technology it has put in place. And I can assure you that INEC is up to the task. Why do I say that? INEC has in-house the resources to improve on the technologies we are using. And let me also assure you that, in fact, the technologies that we have used and have added value and transparency to the electoral process were designed and invented by INEC staff. The smart card reader was an innovation designed and cultivated by INEC staff. The same thing with the permanent voter card. And the same thing with the
Mr. Dazang, just a moment. Apologies to cut in. Just
that
a moment.
we are using now.
Sorry, Mr. Dazang, just a moment. I need to get the closing thoughts of Professor Obasi and Mr. Hassan tonight. We're due for break in 2 minutes, but let me allow Prof and Idayat to give us their closing moment in 1 minute apiece. Let me begin with the lady. Idayat, your closing thoughts on the program tonight.
I think so far so good. We are positive, but if the security agencies continue to be non-partisan during this critical moment, they do not intervene and they ensure that they implement the law such that any miscreant, any thugs that actually come to try to disrupt that process is arrested, we will coast to victory and we will all be very happy we are a part of this process.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hassan. Prof, your final thought.
It can be better said. It can be better said. That's exactly what it is. building on what we have had during the day, if all those who are supposed to do their work, do the needful, do it, and the political party agents are active and alive to maintain their whatever they have gotten in the day, I think Edo will be a model for the future if all the imperfections are corrected.
I must sincerely thank both of you. Ms. Hidayat Hassan, the country director of CDD, the executive director of CDD, and Professor Isaac Obasi, professor of public administration. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll take a break, but when we come back, Mr. Dazang, apologies, I will detain you further for more minutes because we need to take a break, and we'll look critically into the issue of the security of this election and what we need to expect. I will bring in Mr. Kabiru Adamu on the program tonight, as well as the ACG of NSCDC, Mr. Basi Basi. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. A new entrant into the program is Mr. Kabiru Adamu. He's a security consultant. Thank you so much, Mr. Kabiru. He joins us from Abuja studio. Thank you. Also, as well, we have stayed with us, Mr. Nick Dazang. Thank you for staying with us. Apologies for keeping you longer than necessary, but some of this information needs to go out. Of course, Mr. Basi Basi is still with us. Thank you so much. Let me allow Mr. Adamu to come in. Let's pierce and break down the issue of security further. From what you observe and what you saw today and what you have heard, what are your initial thoughts on the deployments, 31,000 for the police, that's aside other security agencies. So far, how far has it been?
On a general note, I would say it's commendable. If you compare it to previous elections, state elections, especially off-cycle elections, the kind of incidences we saw, especially if we use Kogi as the benchmark, I think we've not witnessed any major incidences. As far as the numbers are concerned, that is also a commendable effort. Almost all the security agencies I know have deployed. The two that we've had their figures are the police with about 31,000 and then the civil defense with, if I'm right, about 13,000. So that's quite commendable. The gray area, especially going by previous meetings by the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security, has been in the area of the harmonization of operations of these security agencies. Now, with specific regard to the elections today, we saw an attempt of coordination between the various security agencies. So to that extent, I think lessons have been learned from previous elections, and INEC has put in place measures to improve on some of the challenges that were witnessed in previous elections. So I would say, on a general note, a pass mark for the security agencies.
I raised an issue earlier, since we have the ACG of NSCDC here. I said, is it a good time to have relaxed the curfew at 6 p.m. today? Knowing full well that it's not all over, considering what a lot of politicians know at the critical moment, which is now, is dark, and these results are now at stake. What do you think?
The provision of security is usually done strategically. What are the likely risks that would arise this night? Where is the center of activity at the moment? I would say collation centers. So do we have enough, do the security agencies, the public security agencies have enough resources to ensure security at the collation centers and at INEC offices? Of course, that's another critical area. I would say yes, given the numbers that we've spoken, they do have. But then if you compare the earlier, during the election stage, the fact that there are several polling units, and then you have this number of security agencies, then putting in place a curfew to reduce the areas where they need to look out for, it's a good move. But given that the elections are over, now we're in the collation stage, then I would say that it's as far as I'm concerned, it's okay to handle that. The gray area, and unfortunately I've already received a report in that regard, is the possibility of some of the security agencies attempting to implement functions that are not their designated functions within the ISIS regulation. As an example, the protection of collation centers, which of the agencies has that function? If the military, as an example, attempts to take up that function, why should it attempt to do that? Is that what is contained in the ISIS? So I think those are gray areas that I'm hoping will not repeat itself. We saw it during the general elections in 2019, where one of the agencies attempted to do that, if I remember well, in Rivers State, and the police resisted that attempt, and there was a logjam between the two agencies. I'm already hearing a particular report of something like that. So I hope it does not escalate, and everybody comes to or sticks to his major responsibilities as far as the ISIS guidelines and regulations provides.
Let's ask Mr. Bassi. You are part of the agency security consultative forum for this election. Yes. Who is in charge? Which agency is in charge of safeguarding or protecting the process of collation of results?
The police are the lead agency when election.
Even at the collation now.
Yes, but the police cannot do it alone. The civil defense are there. Other agencies, security agencies are there.
But is the military allowed in that process?
The military are kept off. It is when there is a dire situation where they could not contain, the military are called in. But in every place you go now, in all the polling units, collation centers, it is the police and civil defense, other security agencies like the prisons, the correctional service, and the immigration are all part of it.
So because I asked this same question to Mr. Umar, and I put that same question to Mr. Kabiru Adamu, that if you put the curfew, I mean, the baby is not yet birthed at this moment. I think it is not yet uhuru. The process is not yet over. Is it right to have stopped the curfew at 6 p.m.?
Yes.
Knowing how critical things are.
No, you know.
So there will be movement in and out of the state, isn't it?
Yes, but you know that the area of coverage now has been reduced. Before now, we are looking at all the polling units, but now it's only the collation centers. And most of them, the ward collation centers have been done now at the local government. So only 18 points.
No, it's the issue of when you are transporting.
When we are transporting.
So when you, so this is the scenario that I'm painting in my head.
Yes.
So you stopped vehicular movement. Yes. You stop people moving in and out of the state. You stop people moving around the state.
Yes.
But you have these 18 points. But people will want to transport to Benin City from Ego, from Orion, from every part of the state, Akoko Edo, and wherever they may be. The issue on my mind at the moment is that during the transportation,
there are enough men. There are enough men to safeguard all those materials.
So nobody should be afraid.
Nobody should be afraid.
Okay. Yes. All right. Let me go back to Mr. Dazang. One of the candidates raised an issue of a slow smart card reader performance. What can you tell us? You told us earlier that the smart card reader has a lifespan. Is it that the smart card reader is approaching the end of its time and that's why it's slowed down today? Or what could have caused it?
Well, they show in areas where the smart card functions, there are pockets of malfunctioning. But we anticipated this to happen, and that is why we have technical staff embedded in the wards. In all the 192 wards. So that anytime you have such a challenge, these technical officers are summoned on phone, and there's a vehicle attached to them. They come in and troubleshoot. And if the troubleshooting does not solve the problem, then that particular smart card reader is replaced completely. And of course, when you have that, it would delay the conduct of the election. So we anticipated that, and I told you earlier on that it is in anticipation of that we also introduced the ZPAT to complement the smart card reader. But as it is, we did not deploy the ZPAT in the conduct of the Edo governorship election because, like I said earlier on, we had not perfected the use of the ZPAT. But subsequently, when we do, we will deploy it in subsequent elections and to see how it can aid and supplement the smart card reader. So the malfunctioning was anticipated, and I think that the scale at which we saw this malfunctioning was manageable, and it did not affect the conduct of the election in any way.
I'll come back to you in a moment, Mr. Dzang. Let me go to Mr. Kabiru Adamu. From what we saw today, what do you think should have been done differently from your earlier analysis about the deployment of security in the numbers, in the performance, in the delivery of their roles? What could have been done differently so that the security agencies perhaps would have come out in a finer form today?
There are three major areas of improvement. One of them is training before the elections. The other one is deployment during the elections. And then the big elephant in the room is coordination of functions. Like we say in physical sciences, the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. If you have all of them working together towards a common goal, then the output would be better, and perhaps we wouldn't even need this number. On a lighter note, who can actually raise his hand and say 31,000 police officers were actually deployed? Frankly, nobody. That's just a number that has been put out there. And again, on a lighter note, there could be, the big elephant in Nigeria's room, the corruption tied to that number. So monitoring and evaluation can be improved. When we say we're deploying 31,000, which of the agencies would actually certify that 31,000 are being deployed? And then more importantly, when it comes to the deployment, are we doing it strategically? We identified 8 local governments that could be hotspots. Now, did INEC or anyone within the system ensure that a larger number went to those hotspots? Or was there a standby rapid response force that was adequately mobilized with communication and transportation to deploy to trouble hotspots if they do happen? I would look back to Kogi. Some of the incidences that happened could have been stopped if we had rapid response capabilities within ISIS. So then the last one is the harmonization of the operations of all of these organizations. If we had better monitoring and evaluation functions within ISIS, the electoral security management, perhaps we would have seen an improvement and we wouldn't need this large number of security officers that are being deployed, because at the end of the day, that is another toll on our very lean resources. So for me, introduce monitoring and evaluation within electoral security management, it would greatly reduce the kind of resources that we deploy for election security.
All right, let's take another break. Don't forget that there is another governorship election next month, and that is going to be in Ondo State. Perhaps the second governorship election INEC will be conducting in the COVID-19 period. How far has INEC performed and the security agencies in this election? What are the lessons for Ondo? And especially, we keep our tabs on the election collation and the result collation for today's exercise. How far have they come? We'll get some word and some information for you after this break. Join us again. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Perhaps I should quickly get back to Mr. Dzang. There were over 2 million registered voters. Only 1.7 million PVCs were collected. About 483,000 PVCs are uncollected. Does this give INEC some worries about the number of permanent voters' cards that are not yet collected? Because I know you spend a lot of money in producing them.
Yes, it does. Thank you for appreciating that we invest a lot of money on that. But it's also not possible for all registered voters to collect their PVCs, because some of them would have died before now. But certainly the 483,000 is a substantial number. When you consider that in our own system, we run the first past the post system, which is the majoritarian system, in which for anyone to emerge as winner of a governorship election or a presidential election, first of all, he has to secure the majority votes cast in that election. So and then he has also to meet the requirements of 25% of the votes in at least 2/3 of the local governments in Edo State. And then in the instance of a presidential election, you have to score 25% in at least 2/3 of the states of the Federation and the FCT. So one vote can make the difference, between one candidate or the other. It can determine the winner. If two candidates meet the requirement of spread, and then the other one has just one vote, ahead of the other candidate, then he takes the day. So any vote is crucial in the conduct of our elections, because we defer to what I said earlier on the first past the post system, in which the majority of votes cast is crucial for a candidate to emerge victorious in the contest. So it worries us, and we put in a lot of time, energy, resources, and money belonging to the taxpayers, in doing continuous voter registration exercise, buying direct data capture machines, which are basically laptops with accessories, employing staff to conduct the exercise, and then removing the multiple registrations, and then leading up to the production of the permanent voter card. So when you look at it, a lot of resources are expended, and we regret that after expending these resources, not all the cards are at the end of the day collected.
All right, let's get to wrap up now. And let me get, you practically participated in this exercise. And it's unfortunate that the issue of vote buying again is reoccurring. Pockets of electoral violence also happened today. And going into Ondo, for example, some of your colleagues that will be there, what lesson do you think should be taken from this exercise tonight?
The lessons we have to take in tonight is there should be greater synergy than what we have between all the security agencies, than what we have in the Edo here. So I think when all the security agencies work in harmony and in tandem, we need, as is here in Edo, we didn't witness so much violence, even though the narrative was that violence would erupt in Edo. But because of the tight security situation in Edo State, the hoodlums would not have their way. So I think if we carry it forward to Ondo and give more synergy and greater deployment of all the security agencies of the state, then I think we'll have all the electors will have the confidence to come out and vote. As we have today, there were so many, the turnout that I saw in Benin here was so impressive because of the confidence that people have that they are safe to go and vote.
Let me get Mr. Kabiru Adamu's final thoughts on the program. It's not over. The collation will resume at some point in the night. it's going to be a moment to keep a vigil. But what are the fundamental lessons to be taken away from this exercise of today?
Thank you, Sheun. For me, one major area to look out for, and my expertise is risk management. There was a lot of negative mobilization by the politicians ahead of the elections. So that makes me a bit worried. Negative mobilization means if I'm a supporter, I think my candidate would win, because that's what my candidate has told me. He has told me at all costs he would win. So if I'm a supporter, and God forbid my candidate loses after negative mobilization, the likelihood is that I will react. So that is what I would point the security agencies to. It's not yet Uhuru. Before the elections, they managed the risks. During elections, we've commended them. They are still post-election. And I would urge them to maintain that vigilance post-election. All the stakeholders that played a role, and the CSO, civil society organizations, media, everyone, which is not yet Uhuru. Let's look out. And earlier on, I talked about monitoring and evaluation. I'm very happy with the passage of the Police Act 2020. As far as the police is concerned, the Police Service Commission has been asked to play that role, to look out for the conduct of their officers during election. So that's a good step. Now, for the other organizations, the chairpersons of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security are the INEC chair, the National Security Advisor, and then debatably the Inspector General of Police. So those three bodies have a responsibility to introduce monitoring and evaluation mechanisms within the ISS going into the Ondo elections, so that we utilize the little resources we have, and more importantly, if there is an erring security officer within the system, then he would be corrected by the monitoring and evaluation mechanism. That is something that has never happened, unfortunately, in previous elections. So I'm hoping that going into Ondo, these major areas will be looked at. And to avoid the lack of harmony that we saw in the Edo elections, training is absolutely important. There is an SOP, Standard Operating Procedure, that has been developed by INEC. All the security agencies need to operationalize it so that their officers, men and women, understand that standard operating procedure, and not only understand it, they work with it, fully, 100%.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kabiru Adamu. And let me get 30 seconds final thought on from Mr. Nick Dazang of INEC. Your closing thoughts, Mr. Dazang.
Well, we on the part of INEC, we will study what happened today. We'll learn lessons from the conduct of today's election, and then we'll factor these lessons working with stakeholders in the conduct of subsequent elections. The commission, let me say one or two things. The commission also deploys its own election violence mitigation tools, and it uses these tools to identify likely flashpoints during the conduct of elections. And in addition to that, it shares the intelligence it gathers, when it deploys these tools with members of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security. Secondly, also the Commission, apart from doing a post-mortem and debriefing after the conduct of each election, it has a vibrant monitoring and evaluation department, which is involved right from pre-election to the conduct of the election and to the post-election. It also evaluates all the activities we have done, and it guides there's a committee headed by a national commissioner, and there are other national commissioners on this committee, and this committee advises the commission and excess. So I just thought my friend Kabiru should know this, since that's his area, and that will also provide context or material for him in his discourses. Thank you very much.
All right. Mr. Nick Dazang, Director of Voter Education and Publicity at INEC. Mr. Kabiru Adamu, security consultant, and Mr. Basi, SEG of NSCDC here in Edo State. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time tonight on the program. Well, Channels Television is still keeping you informed on the latest and the details of the Edo governorship election. Stay with us for the coverage of the election, and we will be on the ground for you. The collation will resume at INEC, and we'll let you know. In the meantime, we're closing this segment of the coverage of the Edo governorship election, and we'll hand you back to Lagos for the rest of our programming tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I'm Sean Okibale. Bye-bye.